there. Welcome to the Keith Noble Show. We're going to talk about election fraud today. Of course, the show is brought to you by the AutoChicks, AUTOCHIX, and the Nobles Financial Network. Look them up on Facebook. So election fraud is still a topic. And do you know why? Because every vote should count, but no votes should count that aren't legal. This is so simple. I posted on Twitter a few days ago. How can you certify an election where you have more votes in a district than you had voters? And people said things like, well, people can register the same day. Well, this is true, but don't they add up? Don't they become then legal voters? Of course they do. And people say, well, it takes longer to count that. Well, but this is the problem. It takes longer to count that, but you've already counted and certified the vote before you validated that those who signed up on election day were legal voters, that those were legitimate registrations. This is a problem. It's not a hard problem to solve, especially in the era of technology. It's an easy problem to solve. You enter those in as they come in, right? You write a SQL query, you can figure it out in seconds. But the fact that we don't do this makes it easy for fraud. This is what we have, a system in some states that is easy to commit fraud. Why would you create a system easy to commit fraud if you don't want to commit fraud? Why do you go to the effort of covering up fraud if you're not committing fraud? So there's a dishonesty here in this discussion where people say, well, show me the evidence of fraud. Well, it's not so much the evidence of fraud, it's the evidence of the cover-up of fraud and the evidence of states that have created systems that are easy to commit fraud. If you are not validating signatures, it's an invitation to fraud. If you're accepting ballots without postmarks, it's an invitation to fraud. This is not hard to understand. Now, people are conflating two questions. Is there fraud, and did the fraud sway the outcome of the election? Well, is there fraud? Yes, there is fraud. Let's just all admit to the obvious. There is fraud. Now, did that fraud sway the outcome of this election? I don't know. That's why we need to investigate it. You have people like Lin Wood and Sidney Powell making some pretty fantastic claims. Lin Wood said he believes Trump got 70% of the vote and over 400 electoral votes. That's pretty fantastic to claim. Now, one would assume Sidney Powell and Lin Wood are pretty serious people, but they need to come up with the evidence. They need to show us. Now, there's a certain school of thought they're not going to present the evidence until they have it all, and they have an overwhelming amount of evidence, and they will go to the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court will do whatever the Supreme Court will do. But that they're not going to go there with a half-ass case. They're going to go there with all this evidence that's overwhelming. Well, I kind of understand that from a legal strategy point of view. But they need to show us the evidence. Not just outlandish claims, not just anecdotal evidence, but show us real hard evidence here. This is why it's important we separate these issues, fraud from the outcome of the election, because I'm kind of skeptical they're going to have that level of evidence to overturn the outcome of the election. That being said, we need to hunt down fraud in the system. This is important. Every vote should count, and when there's fraud, your vote counts less or not at all. That matters. That matters a lot. Because your vote should count. This is important stuff. So let's assume that there is fraud, which I think is about a 99.9% safe assumption to make. The efforts to diminish any accusations of fraud are insane. In Wayne County, Michigan, some of the people in charge of certifying the vote were not going to certify the vote. And they started on television calling them racist, saying they were disenfranchising black people because a vast majority of voters in Wayne County are black. Okay, so let me argue this. If there's fraud, you know who disenfranchised the black voter? The people who committed fraud. Understand that. The people disenfranchising people are the ones who are committing fraud. It's not the people calling out fraud, it's the ones doing it. Those people are disenfranchising voters. They're disenfranchising you. Now, I'm kind of doubtful, skeptical there was enough fraud in this election to sway the outcome. Maybe there was, and maybe they can produce that evidence. So far, I don't think the evidence produced indicates that. But it doesn't matter because we need to root out the fraud. Period. It's wrong. It's wrong to have your vote stolen. It's wrong to have your vote diminished just so some people can win or even make it closer. Even if they didn't win, it's still wrong to do. It's illegal. These people should go to prison who do this. Yet every election, well, there wasn't that much fraud, so we'll let it go. It's kind of like saying, well, they didn't steal that much money from the bank, so we'll let it go. Who does that? Isn't your vote worth more than a bank robbery? I would think so. This is important. It's important that we disassociate these two things. We don't conflate the two questions of is there fraud and did the fraud sway the outcome of the election. That's important. We need, regardless of the outcome of the election, we need to hunt down the fraud. We need to eliminate it. We need to prosecute it. We need to put in place systems that are not friendly to fraud. This shouldn't be that hard to do. One person, one vote, every legal vote counts. It's so simple. But there's people here who will fight against that. There's people here who will argue against that. There's people here who say that's too much of a burden. Well, no, it's not. It's what the whole system was designed to be. One person, one legal vote, that vote's counted. That's it. No more votes. Nobody gets prohibited from voting, and there sure aren't additional votes added that no person actually voted. They just get created out of thin air. So, thank you for joining me today. We have to keep up this fight against election fraud regardless of the outcome of the election. That's important. So, tune in tomorrow. I'll see you then. Keep up the good fight. Look up my book on Amazon, Our Dogs Did Not Bark, A Politically Incorrect Dystopian Tale. Somebody told me the other day, our dogs are barking. Let's hope so. So, I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.